See, now we're live. Yay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Roll for Combat Live, where today the topic is about AI in D&D. Before we start asking whether it's bad or not, I think it's important that we define our term, because AI has been for decades something that nobody could really agree on what it was. Like, I studied computer science and with a specialty in AI when I was at MIT. And my advisor, whose advisor was Marvin Minsky, one of like the earliest
I know
AI
Minsky.
guys.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Wow, Minsky. Okay,
Wow,
yeah.
Yes, my advisor's advisor was Minsky. And my advisor would always say that AI was what we used to call anything that was being studied in that field up until it worked, and then some other field would claim it once it was working.
That's
For instance, like the study of like search, like what you would use in Google Maps. Like MIT, like still at the point where I was last teaching at MIT, taught that in the basic intro AI class. But many other fields claim that as their own.
Yeah.
Now that we've come to the world of generative AI, which is a little closer to seeming to have the semblance of appearing to do what some people think of for AI, the sort of classical AI, it needs to have human intelligence. It definitely does not, but it at least comes closer to like passing the Turing test for some people and seeming like they're talking to a human. Now AI is becoming generalized in a different way. And if my advisor was still alive, he might have had to come up with a corollary for it, because it is now something that works, but it is now becoming something where like AI is only being used for like certain generative uses of AI that are like attempting to just do the art instead of an artist, or write the text instead of an author. But there's plenty of AI that has showed up in games other than that. Procedurally generated aspects of games are something that many would consider to be part of the study of AI, or computer opponents that you go up against when the CPU is like playing against you in like a real-time strategy game or something like that, is also, part of the study of AI. So there's a lot of uses of AI that are probably not what people were thinking of when they saw that clickbait-ish title of like, is AI and D&D really so bad? Like, it's not about like, is WoTC going to write the books using generative AI? It may not even be about, is the entire game going to be just run a solo game that's run by an AI GM entirely? Although I actually don't know exactly what we're going to go in here today. But I just want everyone to think about the fact that AI can mean a lot of different things, and it may not be what you first thought of when you clicked on that link, possibly like being like, it definitely is bad. It may include some things that you've actually used before in your game.
Right. Yeah, I think, Mark, you make an excellent point. I mean, Google Maps in particular, I remember when people were like really referring to that as AI, because, previously you needed to, you need to figure out yourself. And now suddenly this system was calculating the best route. It knew better than you did how to get somewhere. And it felt like it was, like a form of artificial intelligence. And suddenly nobody, I remember my parents were like, I don't trust it. How is it going to know how to get to your aunt's house better than me? And we've been going this way for 20 years. And it's like, well, according to this thing, your route is not the fastest, because it takes into account speed limits and traffic. And they were like, very untrusting of it, because it was something new and novel. And so, and then of course, obviously now we don't even think about it, right? Who's the last time that anyone actually looked something up on a map and figured out a way to get somewhere manually? And of course, there's pitfalls to that. And I've been in those instances of pitfalls where like there's been instances where like maybe the information was wrong, and that's not to say that a map couldn't be wrong and you could follow that map. But when you completely offload your independent thought process and just blindly, obediently follow the instructions, whether it's from a computer or an atlas, you could find yourself in trouble. It's like, context clues should have told me this is probably not the right road, despite what the information that's being given to me is.
I think that's true for AI in anything. And so I think what we're going to be talking about here is I'm going to use an analogy. So like generative AI just writing your book for you is something that I think a lot of people are pretty much against for a whole host of reasons. But almost every publisher, a lot of publishers in the business use something like Microsoft Word or Google Docs or something like that that has AI like suggesting that your grammar might be wrong in certain places. And then you get to look and see if it's wrong. But just like in your example, Derek, with the map route, where you shouldn't offload your entire brain to the map, when I get a correction from Microsoft Word or Google Docs, especially since I'm using weird fantasy mumbo jumbo that really messes it up, it's like wrong about the grammar suggestion, like somewhere between like 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 times. If I just said yes every time it gave me a grammar suggestion, I'd be creating grammar errors as well. I mean, it actually would still fix more errors than it caused. But instead, looking at it and thinking, hey, wait, was that a grammar error or is this just totally wrong? Produced a result that was way better than either doing nothing or just mindlessly, obediently clicking the accept.
Steven, you before you want this just to be the Mark and Derek show, or
I don't know. You guys are like, you guys are off and running. I'm like, hey, I don't even say a thing.
Well, because I have like two. So I have a qualification first that I want to sort of stipulate, and then I want to give my arguably hot take. And it relates to exactly what Mark just said, and what probably a lot of people in chat today maybe feel, or at least they believe they feel. So the first is my title, my job title. As some people may know, I was recently laid off from my primary employment. And I worked for a technology company that was owned by private equity that worked with corporation, hedge funds, DOD, other elements of the U.S. government. And we did data, information, and processing for them. And I really can't get too much into the details of it. But needless to say, my role and title there was data scientist. And before that, I worked as an analyst in property and casualty, in car insurance, auto insurance. And my role there over time sort of evolved into more model building and trying to figure out, using data to tell stories. Well, I can tell you that over the last 6 to 18 months, most of my work as a data scientist has really been about how to leverage LLMs, how to leverage these existing models, which quite frankly are computed and calculated at a scale and a size that not even a huge corporation, most huge corporations.
By the way, what's an LLM?
So an LLM is a large language model. And what a large language model is, essentially, is it builds connections between words, and all it's really doing is predicting what the next word is going to be after the word that you just said. And it has this unique ability called attention to sort of not just remember the word that just came before it, but the words that came before that, and to sort of build this idea of holding an object kind of in memory so that it remembers earlier parts of the sentence, which can inform later parts of the sentence. And then that's basically what an LLM does. And it's trained like human beings, right, by exposure and understanding connections between words. So when we say something, if I say, hey, I'm going to Mark's later, stop. And then I say, do you think he has pizza? We understand that I'm referring to Mark, right? Because we have that attention. We know the sentence that came before that. And historically, that has been something that, traditional computers have struggled with to a certain extent. And that is what the creation of transformers, which is a form of neural network, has allowed these models to do. But in any case, my job for the most part over the last 12 to 18 months has been, and again, Joe says data scientist, so Python. Yeah, I was programming in Python and building models, and then it became using LLMs. Now, why don't I have a job anymore? Because like every data scientist in my company was laid off, along with like a lot of other people. And the reason why? Because of AI, right? Because of large language models, because of the fact that they don't need me to build these things anymore. Previously there might have been a role for me to, hey, here's a database and we want you to categorize these columns with certain descriptive tags based on the content of those columns. It's like, okay, I can build a language and something like that, blah, 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 blah. Well, now you don't need me to do that anymore. ChatGPT can do that for you, or Gemini can do that for you. So that's statement number one, which is, you're like, oh, I lost my job to AI. That's my clickbait thumbnail.
Well, no, but the fact that you lost your job recently to AI can help inform the fact that you're probably going to make a statement that is somewhat more pro AI, so people know that you literally just lost your job to it.
Right. That's why I'm saying that. Okay. And I don't even know if that I'm pro AI, but let me qualify a second thing, which is this. I in the last 10 years or so, or whatever, I got into woodworking, and not just 2x4s, but like fine quality, heirloom quality furniture building. Now, prior to that, I never really considered myself much of a craftsman, but I got into it. I got into it pretty hardcore, and I became. It was interesting because I gained a lot of respect for a lot of craftsman-like activities. And that includes things like anything from embroidery to, whatever, to welding to woodworking. And I say this because my ex-girlfriend, she did embroidery with thread and needle. And it would drive her crazy because whenever she would go to Joann Fabrics, RIP, they were going out of business, they had these sewing machines that would do hand embroidery, but it was an automated process, right? It would have this thing, it'd move around, it would make all the different stitches, and people were taking that and selling it on, Etsy or whatever, and basically saying this is hand embroidered, even though it's not, but it is. It's functionally the same thing, just done by a machine. Similarly, there was a time and a place where everything that you had that had a weld on it, your car, whatever, anything, that weld was made by a human being. And it's easy to dismiss welding as some sort of brute, stupid thing like you're just sticking it together. But if you know anything about welding, you understand that there's an art, there's a science, there's a technique, there's a ton of experience that goes into it. And it is a skilled process. And now they are done with automated machines that spin your car around on 3 axes and zip, 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 zip. I got into woodworking. And I promise you that there's a good chance that almost every piece of furniture in your house, from your chair to your tables or whatever, was not made by a human being. Now, once upon a time, that was a craftsman's job. That was a carpenter's job to make that table, to work that machine. And now it's probably being spit out of a CNC machine by someone who barely knows how to work wood. So, and what has this allowed us to do? It has allowed us to democratize the process. It has allowed us to commoditize the process. It has allowed us to make the process more efficient, cheaper, and no one complained. Maybe some of the workers complained, but society as a whole didn't complain. You didn't care that welders were losing their job because your cars were cheaper or better or more consistent or whatever, what have you. And it's interesting to me because for some reason, this recent bout of AI has really triggered people in a new way that in some ways confuses me, because I said this has been happening your whole life.
I'll tell you why.
And you never cared until now. All right, that was my statement.
All right, so I'm going to tell you why it's happening. And I've followed this for a very long time. If people have watched this show, by the way, for those of you who are new, like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. If you ask a super chat, we'll answer it right away. And if we get 100 likes, maybe we'll have Derek do something silly. So if you go back to the Luddites, the Luddite movement, which was automation in textile mills and factories in England, and then they were going in and breaking them because they didn't want that. And you can go, I mean, this has been going on. Like the player piano, that was one of the big first court cases for the Supreme Court, because people were like, it's taking away jobs because now we don't have pianists. And this, you can go back every couple of years, this always happens where something's going to come around. So there's different types of jobs, and everyone knows this. You probably heard, there's blue collar jobs, there's white collar jobs. Well, there's another type of job that not everyone hears about that you study in business school called gold collar jobs. And gold collar jobs are super highly specialized jobs that pay enormous amounts that really no one else can do except extremely specialized people. And these might be specific doctors in specific fields. These are like the cream of the crop. And automation in just a few years, in the last 40 to 50 years, if you've seen the movie Gung Ho, this is kind of what it's all about, is they took the blue collar jobs and then they started to take, more recently, the white collar jobs. But now, for the first time, maybe ever, one of the few times in history where a large majority of gold collar jobs are being taken. And this is really freaking out people, because a good example is like artists, and like true artists. Like, a machine will never be able to do AI art or AI video. Okay, we'll take video, for example.
You say that, and then cut to 20 years from now.
Oh, exactly. Well, already now, even. I mean, the AI video stuff is incredible. And yeah, you could tell it's AI, but the fact that it can even do it, that you can type a prompt into a machine and it comes out with a video of what you just asked it to do is, this is like science fiction crap that you see in the movies 10 years ago that you didn't think was possible. And suddenly, jobs that require thousands and thousands of hours of expertise, that require years and years of dedication, these gold collar jobs are going away to automation and AI. People are really losing their minds, because that's kind of the last safe bastion. And if they're not safe, then no one is safe.
Right.
Another way to look at it is to think about the way people have seen like optimistic science fiction about automation or AI is like, in the Jetsons, where he'll just go and then the computer does all of those boring sprocket related things so that they can relax, and they could spend time on hobbies like painting or writing or things like that. Whereas people consider it like more of a bizarro world like Black Mirror, where it's like, no, the computer's gonna do the art and the music and the writing for you so that you can spend more time at your soul-crushing corporate job instead. Right. So it's like the opposite day in a way.
Yeah. So I think there's something else that's kind of interesting, because I see people again in chat, and I think it's interesting that as a human, Derek, I'm not an artist, but I play one on TV. No, but let's say I was an artist. I worked in watercolors and I worked in oils, and I grew up with the works of Jeff Easley and Larry Elmore. Of course I did. I saw their works. I looked at them. I found, copies of their prints, or I looked at their books of art, or, did Google search, and, I looked at their art, really studied it, sketched it, learned their style, and I integrated it into my own style. And I have a little art business. And someone comes to me and says, hey, can you draw me a picture of like a cool dragon rider on like a silver dragon? And I go, yeah, absolutely. And they're like, yeah, can you do it like that Elmore style that you have? And I'm like, yeah, awesome. I do that. I integrate it. I learn from, and now Derek has actually purchased art directly from Larry Elmore. But let's say Derek, the artist, has never done that. I mean, it's just a style of his. I really like his work, but I've never bought any of his art. I've never paid for it. I've seen it all over the place in books, on covers, on the internet. And I learned from his style, and I integrated it into my own. And then I produce art that is not Larry Elmore art, but is very clearly Larry Elmore art inspired. Am I a thief? Have I stolen Larry Elmore's work? Would you consider me?
Are you selling it?
Yeah, I'm selling it. I'm not saying it's by Larry Elmore. And if anybody were to ask, I would say, oh, yeah, no, I was inspired by Larry Elmore, Jeff Easley, Clyde Caldwell, all the great TSR greats. If you love that 80s TSR aesthetic, I'm your guy, because I love that art too.
And are you like using that art and like tracing it or other things like that to produce your new art?
I don't think I'm directly copying it, but I'm certainly like, if you look, left to right, you would say, wow, yeah, you clearly were inspired by this person's, style and nature.
Yeah. So by the way, this is important to know, because a large portion of art, especially for cheaper TTRPG books, and even just everything in the world comes from these art libraries like Adobe and so forth. And the way these art libraries work is that you can go to Adobe and upload your art to those places, and then you get a percentage of the sales. Like, you set the pricing. So these are basically art warehouses, and they have other things, but we'll talk specifically about art. And one of the big issues is that you can say, oh, I don't want to use AI art. I don't want to see AI art. But if you go onto these if you go to like to Adobe and go to their image sourcing, I forgot what it's called, but they, like 4 or 5 years ago, it was all done by hand, or it was done with computers. Right. Now it's all AI. And in fact, it's very hard to find stuff that's not done by AI, especially the last 2 or 3 years, because people are realizing, oh, wait a second, because they get the money. So especially if it's a field that people were, was difficult to create art in. So people will generate art, just upload it to Adobe and all these other art places. Hopefully it gets bought and sold, and then they get a piece. And they're getting inundated with this. This is also happening on Amazon with those fake books that people are like uploading, that are written by AI. Like, this is really becoming these open marketplaces are getting just flooded with AI stuff.
So Mirtos super chatted. Yeah. The difference is the training companies or software companies that didn't get licenses to train their model.
Actually, I've been working with people on this. You're right, except a lot of those companies are getting sued and losing badly. So that's going away. That doesn't exist as much anymore. So a lot of the newer companies and the large Fortune 500s, they get permission. In fact, they pay pretty well. Or they do what Adobe did and Microsoft did, is they buy out collections from like Getty and stuff for $1 billion, and then they own it, and then they can trade it on their own. And I guarantee this is what will happen, is that, here's the future, is that, okay, Hasbro owns everything that they make for the TTRPGs. They also own anything that you upload to the DM Guild. They own it, not you. So Google or Amazon or someone's going to go to them and say, hey, by the way, Hasbro, can we buy and use all your content to train our AI for like $10 million? And here's the receipts, because they need to have the receipts, especially later, so they don't get. And Hasbro will go, sure, here you go. And now it's trained. And that's what's happening right now. They're buying up these things.
Yeah, so what is more, I'm curious, what is more ethical? Okay, me, a person, right? Now, granted, let's be very clear about this. Whether you're a person or AI, if I literally take a picture or portion of Larry Elmore's art and I copy paste it and I bring it over into my piece of art and I maybe change it and tweak it up a little bit, that is stealing, right? I think we can all agree on that. But if I look at his art and create my own art, and it's very clearly inspired by it, but it is my own unique creation, I don't think anybody would say that that is stolen. Same thing with music, right? Obviously, I cannot take someone's sample, but to say that artists aren't inspired by, or, man, that sounds a lot like, early Michael Jackson. Well, yeah, that was a huge influence of, say, like The Weeknd. And if you listen to his riffs and you listen to his melodies, there's a lot of similarities there. Same with Bruno Mars. But you can't say that.
The problem is that a lot of these AI models actually are doing something that's close to the equivalent of taking the piece and slightly tweaking it. Even some of the newer and better ones, I know for a fact are, because of the fact that I've seen someone ask questions for things that there's not a lot of information on. Someone I know tried to create a bio for me. And it said certain things, and I was like, okay, I know exactly what that came from. I know why it got that. I know who, and it almost wrote the exact same text. And then I went up and Googled the thing that I was looking for, and it was almost the exact same text that the AI had just, it was one of the, I think the most recent GPT, last month.
Yes, but
it had just copied it out. It slightly paraphrased it, and it was exactly the same thing as I was like, this is from Pathfinder Wiki. That one was taken from my blog from when I joined Pi. So
all right, well, hold on. Wait a second.
Copying it and slightly paraphrasing it, you just defined everyone writing a research paper in existence. Is the problem that there's not a little footnote that references the original book? Is that the problem? Is that what people's problem is? That the artists aren't being credited?
Yeah,
No,
they'll
but
just
it was
credit
so
everything.
close.
Yeah,
It was
but-
so close to the sentence that it was
I
before that
guarantee-
I even remembered which sentence it
That's
was.
fine.
Derek.
That's great. No offense, no one cares, and that's why you come up and it has the exact same thing for you. I actually know this because I was working with one of these companies a few weeks ago. They are looking for specific topics. The new companies, the new private AI firms are specifically looking for topics that aren't covered, and they're finding experts in the field and buying their content, whether it's video or papers. They're specifically buying it, so they own it, they have the rights to it, and then they teach these large language models. Also, yeah, I agree right now, but there's so much generated that's AI that you don't know. A perfect example is, I mean, you don't watch movies, Mark, but movies are basically all CG. And I don't
Yeah,
mean...
then the CGI is getting more AI. I know that.
No. I'm not saying AI. I'm talking about CG. I never said AI.
Oh, you're talking about CG?
I said
you did
CG.
say AI. You said
No.
AI in the sentence that was like right before the sentence I responded to.
I'm talking about in the context of movies. And they film, and I'm talking about even like courthouse dramas. I'm talking about the most basic things. I'm not talking about science fiction shows. I'm talking about shows that take place in a room. Okay? They film all of those on green screens because it's way cheaper, it's way easier. They don't need the same people in the same rooms, and you can't tell. I mean, you can't tell. You can look up, you can type in any TV show or movie right now, and there's databases showing how many special effects shots are in there. And you would think there might be 10 or 20, and there might be hundreds. And it's like, it's a courtroom drama. It's like, yeah, because all the sets are virtual now. My brother, who's in Hollywood, I know I always bring him up, but one of the big reasons that he chooses a movie is whether or not he gets to live and stay in LA or he has to go somewhere in the world. And he's not the only one. Okay, these people, they don't like to go on set. It's a nightmare. It's a pain. They have to live in the middle of nowhere. They need body cards. It sounds like fun. It's not, especially if you have to do it 3, 4, 5, 10 months at a time. Well, guess what? Most of his jobs are now, a lot of them are in LA because it's all virtual sets. And it's becoming more and more common. It's also cheaper. It's just cheaper to do everything virtually than to like set up actual sets. So my point is that there's so much being done in movies right now that no one even knows. And that's the thing. AI and these tools right now, yes, it's one of those, you can tell when it's there, but what about the times when you can't tell? And there's a lot of those.
So we had
way
a super
more than you
chat that
think.
said, if AI tools are here to stay, said lot unfinished projects, should we focus on using it as an editor instead of a generator? And I would say that, like we said before, it already can be useful as giving editing suggestions or just generally giving suggestions. Like, think about it if you're a GM. I'm not saying it's replacing you as a GM, but in the same way that you might be like, I think I'm going to take this book of random D100 tables that I bought and roll on this D100 table because I'm not really sure what to do for this, like, name of this NPC or this dungeon's, like, certain feature, whatever you were rolling the table for. You could use the AI to come up with an idea for that. And just like if you roll the table and you're like, I don't like that, maybe I'll roll again. You can also do the same if you were using AI as an assistive tool, or like you said there, an editing tool. Yunderland Game says the main issue is in our capitalist society, fruits of our labor to make these automation processes don't go to the general public, but to the richest top 1%. I'm fine with improving safety, consistency, and quality.
Well, if you, well, that's I don't think that's true.
No, I think that is, no. I think that is
if
true.
you're talking about pure money, yes,
Yeah.
but if you're talking
Well,
about the benefit of society, no.
Well, again, and I just, it's so weird to me, but I mean, because I agree with that 100%, right? And in a certain extent, which is that, right, the efficiency and the real problem we're talking about here is that, you know, again, I've quoted this before, but like, you know, the movie Moneyball, where they start using data science to predict baseball players, and all the scouts and everyone in baseball hates it. And he, you know, the guy at the end of the movie, the guy who plays the owner of the Red Sox says, it's not that you're just threatening their way of, you know, life. It's not that you're threatening the way of doing things. It's that you're threatening their jobs. You're talking about taking away their livelihood, and people will fight back against that. And that's a valid concern. And as we become more efficient, right, in theory, the wealth of that, not like in the money sense, but in like a gross domestic product sense, right, should have been more distributed. And we should have had more things like UBI and universal health care and all this other stuff, because the efficiencies of society aren't really showing up in the vast majority of our things, whereas the richest people are wealthier now than ever. So I get that people are upset about like potentially losing their jobs. But again, where was the outrage when I'm sure an entire generation of carpenters and welders went away? They lost their jobs.
There was outrage, but it wasn't as widespread beyond the people who had solidarity with those carpenters.
Sure, that's fair enough. I'm just saying there was once upon a time where a company like Ford or GM had a lot more people working there, and now you have a lot less people working there. And those people that aren't working there anymore, or their children, the jobs that were there are not there anymore. And GM and Ford are still selling their cars and still making a shitload of money, and those machines have been paid for a long time ago. So yeah, okay, there was outrage, Murtos, but my point is everyone just kind of went, well, okay, and we just move on. Like, and of course, you were talking about the Luddites, people who literally, were like burning down the machines and breaking them down and stuff like that because they were like, rah. And so it's like, well, what do we want to do here? Are we saying that we want everything to be slow and inefficient? No, but I do agree that there's a problem of these efficiency gains and this lack of capital should be returned, to the people. So I'm
By the way,
big believer of that.
So I was in St. Louis the last couple of days, and just 2 days ago, actually, I went on the Budweiser tour, and it was pretty fun. Got to meet the horses and pet them; they're really nice. But the cool
They're
thing,
huge.
Yeah, the Clydesdale,
Yeah, Clydesdale.
that we met. The one I met, it weighed 2,000 pounds, a ton. Think about that. A horse is a ton, and they can draw twice their weight, so they can drag 2 tons. I was like, and there's 8 of them. I'm like, that is insane how strong they are.
In D&D, third edition of Pathfinder 1, they could have dragged 5 tons.
They say that's what them not even paying it. Right. Oh, okay. They might be able to.
Mark, is that right? Can you drag 5 times your heavy load? Is that right?
But this is them just pulling. No, this is them pulling without even noticing. They said they could easily pull, and that was just them without being strained. And they can go all day. That was the thing. They were like, because they'll do these parades, they were saying they'll go like 10, 12 hours pulling 10
Shout out to Rule of Cool. He says, you were wrong, Derek. Horses aren't huge. Horses are large. Good. All right.
Well,
very
these
well
horses, they were huge.
All right, stop the presses.
Wait.
Quick question.
I didn't finish my story. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Finish. Fine.
Okay, so my story is this. So we went there, and we went to go see them making the beer. And this is the largest... I think it's the largest brewery in the world, they said. And it is. It's gargantuan. And we go around, and you guess how many people... Okay, now you think about it. A brewery was an hour-and-a-half long tour. We're seeing all the vats. We're seeing everything. We're going around everywhere. How many people do you think I saw on those floors? I'm asking you guys.
I don't know.
Very few.
Yes.
A couple?
Exactly. Oh, there was like maybe 5, 10. And they were saying about there used to be over 6,000 people who worked on the factory floors that would have to constantly measure everything and because everything is temperature controlled. It's extremely detailed because of how they, make all the beers, and they all have to taste the same. And it's a very delicate process. And they were going on. It's like, it's all computerized, and everyone now sits in an office. Everything's done by computers. Everything is automated. And the only place that they actually had people was in the bottling process. And the bottling process was because, things can physically go wrong during the bottling process. But even that was all automated. And they said, now they have 2,000 people who work in the actual, in the actual manufacturing sector of Budweiser. And they make more now than they've ever made in history. And I can talk about that in almost any category. If you talk about farming or all manufacturing, because they can go 24/7. It's almost, the quality is superior. The amount of errors are, it's just, I won't get into the whole thing. You know where I'm going with this. It's like, they do it because if they don't do it, someone else will. And that's the other thing. They're not competing anymore with someone down the street. They're competing with the world. And they can say, oh, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. And yes, our stuff costs more. My favorite brand of clothing was American Apparel. And American Apparel was proud that all their clothes were made in America. They used American factories, all that stuff. And trust me, their clothing was superior. It was also very expensive. And they also went out of business because of that. So
yeah, I mean, somebody in chat was talking about something about carpentry, and I could say this. So when I got into furniture making, and I wanted to do it by hand. Now, I used power tools. I didn't just only use hand planes, but I didn't have any sort of CNC machines. Every piece of lumber that I had got milled by me, planed, jointed by me, cut by me, mortised by me, right? All hand assembled, using a manual process. And I felt so bad because people would come to me and they said, hey, Derek, at the time I wasn't working. This was during COVID when my photography studio was shutting down. The YouTube channel was just starting off. I wasn't making any money. And people would come to me and say, Derek, I heard you make furniture. Can you make me a table? And I'd be like, what's your budget? And they'd be like, like $1,500, $1,000. I would say, buy it from online. I can't buy the materials to make you a table. The only people I could sell tables to were people who had way too much money, these richy rich, maybe not 1%ers, but 10%ers, who could afford to spend $6,000 on a white oak kitchen table that was handmade. Everybody else, take your mass produced, quote unquote, piece of crap.
So wait, what was your stop the presses thing you were going to say?
I put it in chat because we were talking about horses. And then I was like, do people prefer, you're talking about how they're large. He said, do people prefer the old 3.0 where large horses?
5x10. No, 10x10. No. The 1x2 is stupid. I know it makes more sense, but it was such a, because they're long. So,
yeah,
right. Right. It makes more sense.
You also had in 3.0 large creatures that were tall that only took up a single square.
Yeah, I know. That's stupid too.
But they had reach.
It's all stupid.
Okay, so we have two super chats that are kind of somewhat in conflict with each other. Mirto says, this helps the big companies, but also helps small one-man shops use a co-packer. Small mom and pops can be more professional now, where Yunderlin Game says you can automate, outsource, and make things cheaper all you want, but eventually no one has a job or money to buy your stuff. We need collective action.
Yeah, no, that is true. That's 100% true.
No,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Yeah. Both of them can be accurate, even though they seem to be in conflict. Now, I do want to say that when we started this, or even before this show, I was asking Steven, and based on the title and the topic, I thought that the show was going to be more about
we're going to get to
those,
it. Well, now we're going to get
assistive ways that you can use it, like the grammar checker in your D&D game. But we've kind of gone macro into
we have. Well,
will AI conquer?
We needed context. We needed context. Yeah. So now let's get to that second part. And the main reason I wanted to get Derek on is because Derek has been using AI tools for his games in a very interesting way that you've been telling me, recapping things like these are, I wouldn't call them innocent, but let's just say non-nefarious things that really help the game.
Non-nefarious.
Non-nefarious. Well,
non-nefarious.
That was an excellent point. So for example, my actual plays are on YouTube, and I asked it to, do a summary of the last session we had. And not only was the summary ridiculously good, it then ranked the players and their effectiveness. And then it figured out some of the lore.
Wait, did you ask it to, or did it just decide to put that in summary?
It asks you for prompts afterwards. They said, would you like to get it asks you so I said, can you give me can you summarize this session of what happened? And it did an amazing summary.
So who did the AI think was the most effective character? Did it also discount support characters and healers?
No. You see, you are
it's so non-human. Then real humans just ignore the crucially important support characters and healers and focus only on the
No,
DPR
this thing
people.
was so freaking good that I couldn't stop hitting the prompts and asking it for more things, including where it actually thought where the adventure was going. And this was the scariest part, is it was correct. And I was like, holy crap.
Well, it may have actually, in its list of data that
It might have
it stole or grabbed from people. It may
No.
literally have the adventure.
Nope.
If not that,
Nope.
it may have stolen info from Reddit about like an AP where people were asking for help
Nope.
running the adventure.
I just don't understand
because
why
this was
when
stuff
an
I
AI,
added.
wait, no, but I don't understand why is it that when an AI reads something, it's stealing, but when I read something, it's not stealing? Like somebody up ahead, somebody above, Spark the Kin said, Spark the Kieran, sorry, get it right. A question: if I feed an AI a bunch of Critical Role videos and ask it to write me a new campaign module based off of that, and it spits out, new characters, am I practically a thief? Question: if I watch a bunch of Critical Role videos and and you ask me to create a new campaign based off of those themes and ideas and characters, and I create something, am I a thief?
Oh wait, Derek, let me try to help you with this.
Everyone's a thief.
Yeah, okay.
Now, let me try to help you with this, okay?
Wait.
So,
I'm going to give you the quote.
Hold on. Just very quick. Somebody asked an AI to make a Pathfinder 2 displacer beast, okay? And it produced a perfectly great Pathfinder 2 displacer beast. It made some idiosyncratic choices that didn't make total sense, but that you could see a cat-like creature having kind of easily. When you looked at it, it's like, oh, I guess so, but the D&D displacer beast doesn't have this, so it's kind of weird. But then when you look, when I looked, I was just curious about it. I found on Reddit someone had made a Pathfinder 2 displacer beast, and it had literally every decision that was in the AI's displacer beast, including the weird ones that you wouldn't think that would be in a displacer beast completely.
Great. When did you do this?
Like,
Mark,
this is this.
I know, but when did you do this? Like a year ago, 2 years ago? Because let me tell you.
It was a year ago,
fine.
so that
might as well have been like 1,000 years ago.
I get it.
Do it again now. The technology, because I also was in that boat of like, oh, I was using it like a year ago and it was fine. I've been using it now. Holy, it is at levels that are truly terrifying. Forget it. Like, you agree? Like a couple years ago or even a year ago, yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it's not like that anymore. Okay,
I think also too, and maybe I'm like a cynic, okay? But also I think people are giving like too much credit to the creative process of a human being. I think, as if there was some sort of magical spark inside of all of us. I don't believe that. I think we're just biological thought processing engines that take inputs and learn behaviors and then mix them up and create new patterns based off of existing patterns that we have been exposed to. We are all products of our biases, and we're all products of what we've seen and what we've experienced. And, in terms of like genuine inspiration, I don't really believe in it, in a sense that a classic debate, which we get into our Discord all the time. We get this in streams too, where people will say things like, I was so genuinely surprised by my character's action. And I said, no, you weren't. I said, your character's action was you. And they're like, no, it's like my character was living their own life. And I go, I think you're full of shit. I don't think you know what you're talking about. I go, your character's actions are a direct result of your behavioral, your inputs, your biases. So I
disagree, Derek. You have a right to. I believe authors who tell me that they had intended their story to go one way, but as they wrote it, the character's truth and the way the characters acted turned out a different way. Because while yes, they might have been the result of thought processes that knocked over the dominoes, it can still surprise you when you follow that path to its conclusion. It can surprise the version of you who was just plotting it out in advance.
Oh, that's probably fair. Like at the like if I'm talking about where I started versus where I'm at, yeah, that's fair. But in terms of just like, again, I still think though that those decisions are, still based off of your biases, and they're still based off of your exposure to different things. I refuse to believe that any one of these people who've made any of these books weren't inspired by countless other works. And people are like, no, the AI needs to cite, and the AI needs to footnote, and the AI needs to give accreditation, and the AI needs to give money and fees. All these books back here, show me the 700-page footnote references where they said, these are every single product that I ever read that influenced me in some capacity when I wrote this creative work of art. And I gave that author from 1978 who wrote The Lost City, Module B4, I gave them 0.01% of my money that I made from this book because I read that when I was a kid. It had a big influence on me. You're not going to find it. At best, you're going to get that one paragraph that says list of inspirations, and they're like, these are some books and movies and adventures that I really like. But
anyhow,
anyways.
So one of my absolute favorite quotes of all time. To steal ideas from one person is plagiarism. To steal it from many is research. And that, I believe, is even more salient today than ever. With that, quickly, before we go way off more tangents, so we can at least talk about it.
Let's get to the topic.
Tell us what you've been doing, because he's got a call. So we're never getting to the topic because he has an emergency call. Derek has a call. Well, I know one of the best things that we did, especially for myself, is that what I did is
his call looks like it may have ended.
I've been copying and pasting. Well, one thing I've been doing is I've been copying and pasting the transcripts of my actual plays into ChatGPT and asking it to give a recap, which I can then give to my players so they can freaking remember, because they can't remember anything. And that is a very nice, very quick, and it does a really good job of doing these recaps. And you can even say how long or how, whether you want it to be just a few sentences or a few paragraphs, whatever you want. It's really great. Oh, the other one, good artist copy, great artist steal.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. But also, shout out to D Priest. D Priest usually has some pretty good takes. He says, "See, this is a quintessentially human experience in this stream. Never getting to the intended point of the topic." Like,
but what you've been using AI a lot recently, though, Derek.
Yes, I have.
So why don't you go through some of the ways you've been using it?
Yeah, so I use it in a number of ways. So the first way that I use it is, and again, for the haters out there, I'm not selling anything, right? I mean, these are either for my personal use or, at best they're being used for, like a game I'm running or something like that. The first thing I do is, and I say this, unfortunately, as someone who has spent a lot of money hiring artists to do custom art for my channel and been what I can only describe as, at best, disappointed. At worst, just flat out stolen from. Because some of these artists literally just weren't worth, the time it took to even talk to them. So I have used the AI to generate a ton of art assets for my personal games. Now, I've bought art packs. I still buy art packs. I think they're pretty cool. And I think
very important. This is for your personal use. You're not selling.
Yeah,
anything.
He said that before. He's
I know. I'm just reiterating.
He's not putting it in a book.
Yeah, I just want people not to freak out here.
Just for his home game.
Yeah, just for his home game, his home personal use.
Correct. And this is the same way that, for example, I might, there's a cool website called CraftPix, and it makes like pixel art. And I bought packs from them to use for my pixel art game. And I'll buy it, and I'll be like, yeah, this is cool, but I want the dagger to be blue, and I'll take it into Photoshop and I'll throw a color filter on there or whatever like that and change the color to blue. So it's me taking art and then using it for purposes. But I have found that using that, obviously, for art assets has been really powerful. The other thing that I do for it, as Stephen was saying, is I will take the transcripts. Now, my games are on YouTube. I could take the YouTube transcript.
Right, and so are mine.
Yeah, I could take the YouTube transcript, copy the text, put it into a .text file, upload that to something like ChatGPT, and as Stephen was saying, I can ask it to give me a summary. But furthermore than that, I can also ask it questions like, do you think, like what are some interesting ideas? Where could we take this campaign? Like, what do these players seem to be most interested in? I can actually ask it questions because I can teach it about my campaign by giving it numerous examples of the play. and they can actually learn the behaviors and the style and the nature of these players. So it's not just about like creating a summary. I can also use it to sort of, learn the same way that Instagram and Facebook and all those other people learn your behaviors and use it to, influence you. I can do the same thing where ChatGPT or LLMs can give me insight into my campaign. They can give me insight into my players. What might be an interesting plot for them. Thirdly, I'm a big fan. I have a copy of it like right here. I'm a big fan of, oracles, right? Not the class, although the new Oracle suite. This is the original tome of adventure design. These are just
Linda and I have that one too.
Yeah, these are just random. I mean, this is literally a book of nothing but random tables that you can roll on to become inspired. And I've used these books for years. I've had this book for almost 15 years and more than that. But sometimes I will just go to ChatGPT and I will say something like, I need a really thematic, like, for example, I'm thinking about running a Monster Hearts game at Origins. And Monster Hearts is a teen supernatural monster romance game. And I said, hey, ChatGPT, give me 5 suggestions for a really evocative setting for a Monster Hearts game. And, it spat out ideas that it probably begged, borrowed, stealed, cobbled together from 100,000 different sources, the same way that I would. And you might read this and go, wow, this kind of sounds a lot like Twilight. And I'd be like, yeah, the same way that if I made something, it would probably end up sounding a lot like Twilight, which is great because that's what I want, right? I want the trope. I want it to feel derivative, in my case. I think sometimes, brand new creative expression is a good thing, but sometimes I want the tropes. I want the sort of, tried and true thing. So when it comes up with, and this is the one I kind of went with, when it comes up with Ashwood Falls, a fog-shrouded Pacific Northwest town surrounded by dense forests, rocky beaches, and forgotten places. Locals say Ashwood Falls is built upon something older and darker, a town cursed to keep secrets. I'm like, great job. That sounds totally derivative and tropey. That's exactly what I want in most of my RPGs. So, I mean, I find that a combination of, just literal random prompts plus using ChatGPT to bounce ideas off of has been very, 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 very productive for me in coming up with ideas.
By the way, all hail the Shell Father.
All hail.
Yeah, people keep saying that, but I think that your second of your 3 points is worth thinking about, especially the third one. Like we kind of already said earlier too. We gave that as a sort of a teaser, but the second one, which was that essentially like the big money corporations that are mining data from Facebook or other things like that to super micro target you into these advertising campaigns, they already had the ability to do some of those kind of things even before generative AI became more generally available. And so in some ways, the fact that you can do that with some of these AI tools, Derek, is democratizing the process. So it's not only people who can pay for like that ridiculous, pay Facebook to mine data and micro target towards people.
Yeah. I mean, so I find, there's even, an interesting prompt if you're like me, because let's be clear, I've used a lot of LLMs and I used ChatGPT primarily. And I had, when I was working, I had the premium subscription, the $200 a month one, but now I'm the pro, obviously. I've used it for work. I've used it for my own personal fun games. I use it for my channel. I'll do a video and I'll say, hey, like, what should I put in the description for this video? Like, what did we talk about? Like, boom, here you go. It's a great way to do chapters for your video. Again, this is a YouTube thing, but like, hey, where were the interesting points? Give me the timestamps so I can add them to the YouTube description so that it can put the chapter markers in. So I've used that a lot. It's learned a lot about me. And so I can ask it questions like, what is a cognitive bias that I tend to have? and be really surprised by the answers that I get.
And will ChatGPT say, Derek, you tend to be a little bit too cynical about things and often take a contrarian approach.
Yes.
And I've noticed that when you've been talking to me before.
Right. The one time I remember it said something like, you're very hard to please. You never seem happy with my first results or something like
wow. You see, there's a perfect example is that now psychiatrists or analysts are going to be freaking out because their jobs are going to go away because ChatGPT will be able to take over something that people spend years and years and years to perfect.
Okay, I think that is actually like what Derek's been talking about, like where should I make the chapter breaks? Those are things you can check. You can be like, was that a wild and outrageous place to make the chapter break, or was it a good place? YouTube is already getting the AI to figure that out to put ads in there. So it's not like it exists. But if you try to have someone treat psychological disorders using an AI, I think that is far too dangerous.
No,
if it messes up.
Mark, you actually hit something that I think is really, really important, which is, one is, again, I worked in auto insurance, okay, for a long time. And I can tell you this, hands down, okay, it's actually shocking that more people don't die on the roads because people are terrible drivers, like by and large. Think about how bad the average driver is and realize that 49.999% of people are worse than that. All right. Think about how think how stupid the average person is, and then realize half the people are more stupid than that. The thing about AI driving, and the thing about AI art, hell, a totally AI created book, right? The worst sin of all. It's a book. It's an RPG book. It's an art. No one's going to get killed because of this. Yes, maybe somebody got but people are like, oh yeah. The Teslas drive themselves. That's cool. And like everyone's just like, they're like, I'm fine with that AI. That's cool. They're doing a new thing now on in Ohio where they have.
Wait, you think that people aren't freaked out by those cars?
Well, but I mean,
people are. Yes, humans are terrible drivers. People are more freaked out by the AI cars and any little small mistake they make than perhaps they should be compared to a human driver.
Well, that's my point. Is even if
you were just saying that they weren't freaked out by the Teslas driving themselves.
I'm saying that they're like, oh, this is very disturbing, but the thing proceeds on. Like no one's like stopping it. People are still like, oh, obviously now there's like a backlash against Tesla because Elon Musk is a moron. But people are still like, this is awesome. Or they're like, oh, I'm a little bit concerned about this, but it is what it is, or we're not going to stop that. That's just going to keep happening. There's a new thing now in Ohio where like one truck is being driven by a human, and then there's like 4 or 5 autonomous trucks behind it.
Yeah. That's going to be revolutionizing.
And no one's like, I mean, I'm good. When I say no one, obviously there's people who are upset about it.
Yeah.
But no one in this chat is like, oh, those poor truck drivers, you're taking away from them their ability to spend their entire life in the seat of a semi. And, obviously you might be upset about them losing their job, and that's right to be so. But it's at the same time, I'm like, how is that not as criminal as any of this other art stuff? But I found it to be very helpful. And as a side note, if you're a programmer, for starters, if you're a programmer, you know that your whole life you have been Googling and using Stack Overflow for all this shit anyways. So you're doing what you were always doing, which is, trying to find examples and replicate it and convert it into your need case, except for like those psychos who can just sit there with like and they like know every single syntax.
So chat brought up a useful point to this, especially with the AI psychologist that turns out to like really screw someone up, and then they do something drastic and irreversible, would be equivalent to the AI car that hits someone, or on its own, or any of these other things, AI prescription thing that prescribes a dangerous thing to people. Who is liable for this at that point? Right?
Well, we're still figuring, but that's the thing. Everything needs precedent and everything has to be figured out. So right now you were trying to say, oh, we need to know right away. Well, that's not how law works. Law works based on years of precedent. So what's going to happen? There'll be lawsuits. They'll figure it out. That's what the law process is for. And then precedents will be set. So you specifically want the answers now. Unfortunately, that's not how things work. That's not how life works. Sorry.
Yeah. Now, listen, also, I do think, Sabbath is right, which is, look, these things are not, this is not a panacea. This is not a miracle cure. It is literally just algorithmically predicting text, or predicting pixels in the case of an image, using convolutional neural networks. But it is a powerful tool for a lot of reasons, and it can help you with, sorting. I had to download my bank statements to do my taxes. They're all in PDFs for some ungodly reason, and they won't let me download them as XLS or CSVs. So I had ChatGPT. I said, hey, here's 12 months of bank statements in PDFs. Figure out the formatting, export it all to a single Excel file with tabs. Done.
Oh, I'll tell you something we're doing. So we have
now, did I just steal from some programmer that I would have had to hire on Fiverr to write that program for me to do that? I guess. Did I steal from myself because I didn't have to sit there for an hour and a half and open up different PDFs and copy paste individual lines into Excel? I guess. But to me, that's a very useful skill set. Very useful.
I mean, like, even our own uses that I'm looking into using AI for is the monster parts system, because right now the monster parts system is actually mostly automated, but there's a few parts where it's sort of touch and feel and you need to kind of figure it out on your own. And I've actually had problems with this over the years, how to add a monster parts system to Pathfinder and 5e. And not so much for our monsters, but for all the monsters. And
right, because for ours, we're going to do it by hand and check, because we want to make sure it's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you created 5 homebrew monsters, and we put in rules that explain how you can figure out what parts they have, right?
Yes.
So you could do that. You obviously can't come to us and be like, Mark and Steven, what parts are they supposed to have? You'd use the same process you would for your published book. Go. I mean, maybe, like, I don't know.
We'll do it for maybe one, but I can't do it for 20.
I'm not that much of a pushover. I'm probably not just going to keep doing that for all of your monsters. But you could use the rules that are in there. But if you made like 50 monsters, maybe it would save you time if the AI proposed monster parts and then you vetted it to see if you agreed with it. Steven gave me an example of it, and I found that it was like 80% accurate, which is that would be a B, right? That's pretty good. Like about 20% of the things that it said.
But here's the crazy part.
Were wrong things.
Yeah, it was a little wrong.
Like, this monster is wearing heavy armor. Therefore, when you like take its parts, you can create a heavy armor. Like, you could see why it did that, how it got to the mistake, and everything like that. But it was also, since it explained its reasoning, very easy to see where it was wrong quickly.
And more importantly, that was the first try, and it got 80. It was like 80% on try number 1 before we even started to teach it and iterate. And I was,
to be fair, with 80%,
crazy.
some of the reason it is 80% is, like you said, Steven, much of it is automated, and it generally got the automated
in our chat,
stuff right.
I believe is working on the monster parts AI right now to help make this. It won't be 100%, but it's probably going to be in the high 90s. And we will also tell you like where to look out for things, because there's specifically parts that are feel. Like, and we'll tell you where those feels are. That's why we haven't automated it. But there's a lot of it that is literally just, if it has this skill, if it has this trait, then it has this ability and imbuement. And it's just A to B.
And that's why I would call it more like, because much of it is automated, there is an AI aspect to it, but most of it is just an automated tool that it gives you all the things that it needs to give you, and then it tries to sort of guess at the other ones. It's closer to what people consider procedurally generated, which really is just another application of AI. But if you tell someone their game is procedurally generated, people feel better about that, I guess, because now, because of some of the things with Gen AI, there's like a negative connotation.
Right. But anyhow, that's an example of a really good use of AI that will actually help me, and it'll help you if you use the monster part system, and it'll make the system just easier to use, especially if you're using either homebrewed monsters or monsters that are already in the game, which I see a lot of people asking that. A lot of people have been asking to take all the Pathfinder monsters from all the bestiaries and turn them into monster parts, and you know what, it's not a bad idea, but someone's got to do it, and no one's been jumping to do it. So now suddenly, if we have a tool that people will be able to use, and if it's pretty damn accurate, especially, you might not care. You might not care that it's 100% accurate. 95% accurate, it might be good enough for you. And that's probably
like in our books,
most
it needs
people.
to be. Yeah, in our books, it needs to be more than 90 or 95%
that's to
accurate
be
because
as
that's
clo-
our books.
yeah, it has
but
to
in your
be
home game,
100%.
if it accidentally forgot that you were supposed to be able to do like the sturdy property or something like that on your item, maybe your group didn't want to do the sturdy property with that monster anyway. There's actually a high chance that they didn't. So if it misses one thing that should have been in there, it won't affect you that much. But in the book, it would be a problem because every group around the world would not be able to use sturdy when they should have been able to, for instance.
So that's one way that we are going to be exploring. I'm not doing it yet, but I'm exploring using AI for our own products. And I've said this for years. I use the AI grammar checkers.
We mentioned it earlier.
Oh yeah, I use it, but I personally go through every piece of content, and what it's really good at is finding missing words, like the little ises and uhs, like those it finds. That is like the godsend. That it finds missing words. It just finds little things that your brain will automatically fill in, and obviously the AI checkers don't, and they catch it right away.
People have been using that for years.
Oh yeah,
and
Word had grammar
some
checker.
Of the same, some
used
of
to
the
use it
same
all the
people
time.
who, yeah, Word does. Some
Right,
of the same
like
people who
25
definitely would
years
not
has
want
had
to
it.
would not want to replace all of the text.
No.
with something that
I
was
don't use it as
generated.
a replacement, but as a tool, it is
Yeah.
really made my writing. And to be honest, it's made my writing better because it suggests things and methods of writing and words to use. And no, it finds little things like you've repeated this word too often. Use a different word, and they're right. It's like it's like, yeah, you're right. This word has been reused too many times. But
Right,
Is
but
when you work with it
oh
instead
yeah, I
of
work
having
with
it replace
it.
the process.
No.
Right. But
Never.
are you stealing some editor's job by doing that, Stephen?
Yes, I am. I'm stealing it from myself because I'm the one who does it. So
Well,
Yeah, Steven would have been the one who did that. Some of that.
all right, but I mean, obviously there are people who are professional editors, and
yeah, you know what? You're right, but I would have had to go through it anyhow.
Steven and I would have sent it to the other person, like to write. If it's like Steven did it, he sends it to me, and if I do it, I send it to Steven. We actually do that anyway.
We do that anyhow. Mark
We do
goes,
it, and
we
we
already do
find
that.
we find copy edits that made it past those checkers. Those
All the
checkers don't
time.
find everything all the time.
Yeah.
And so all it's doing, we wouldn't have brought a third person in to do it necessarily in that case, during that stage of the process, that early stage. But in that case, it just sort of gives some suggestions of places to look. And like I said, it's kind of wrong a decent percentage of the time, probably because of all the fantasy words that we use. Now, a super chat from Myrtos is that Myrtos says that they've used AI to generate monsters for Foundry since Foundry publishes its JSON format, writing up the description of the monster and then putting it in Foundry, basically getting it to put it into the Foundry format.
Yeah. Again, and it's I don't know. It's so interesting. I guess it really comes down for a lot of people. Like a lot of people are like, yeah, that's totally fine. And it's interesting because there seems to be this break point for people when it comes to quote unquote creative, and what defines creativity, and why that is a particular part where people really draw a line. And again, I mean, I haven't seen, in fact, most programmers I know, I mean, have been quick to embrace the power of LLMs to rapidly create code, to do unit testing, to rapidly iterate on, hey, I need a function that will reverse this matrix and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, I could probably write this, but it might take me at least most of the afternoon. And ChatGPT could just knock it out in, 1 minute. And this is making me way more productive. This is making me way more. And of course, again, you might say, well, then your company's not going to need as many programmers. Correct. I just lost my job. But is that necessarily a good thing? Am I saying my company should have remained slow and inefficient and been hiring a ton of people? I mean, obviously, I would like to still get a paycheck. If they kept paying me and then used AI, I would be totally fine with that. That sounds like a totally reasonable.
What if they
expectations.
compromised with you, Derek, on that, and they cut your salary in half,
Yeah.
but just used AI? You could just do whatever you want.
Oh, Mark, I'm so in. Mark, I'm so in. You know,
I don't know. I mean, this whole it's a fascinating topic in general, but the big issue is that, oh man, I don't know. Like I'm actually a big proponent. Back in the day, in the Microsoft days, when Bill Gates was like the shit, and you know, like, he really was pretty ahead of his time. Back in the 90s more, and I've actually read a lot of his books and a lot of his predictions. He actually wrote a very interesting book right before like the year 2000 where he was predicting like where the future was going to be, and he's pretty good about that stuff. And he recently came out with something saying like in 20 years from now, at the current rate, it's like we are going to have so many jobs being done by AI that it's actually gonna start causing like a problem in terms of what humanity does.
absolutely.
And that's where I'm really getting worried, is that would we actually become, because they always talk about that, like especially in the 50s, there would be like the leisure class, and that we would be doing nothing and robots would take care of everything.
And to be clear, we could be there,
right?
We have increased individual efficiency on a scale that our forebears could never have possibly imagine. We have generated an unbelievable amount of wealth, privilege, and resources for every man, woman, and child in the world. It's just misappropriated, and it's misallocated.
But not only that, it's like, well, then what do you do if you have nothing to do? I mean, that really is.
Well, I mean, you've just described Star Trek.
Yeah.
You've just described
Literally.
a post-singularity world. You've just described the greatest RPG of all time, Stephen.
I don't know. What is it?
Free market.
Yeah, he was going to say free market.
I forgot. I didn't know. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't know that's what that free market's truly about.
Look, I got the last copy.
Well, I do have
the idea of free market is that you have money doesn't exist. You can get whatever you want whenever you want it. You're functionally immortal.
Well, that is Star Trek.
There's nothing to do.
Right.
All right. What do you do? What do you do?
I know.
That's the whole point of that.
Yeah. I mean,
but if it and you get to a world, right, where this idea, because I guess the question is, if you didn't have to create art to make a living, if everybody got, I don't know, $100,000 a year or something like that, and cost didn't scale or whatever, enough to live comfortably and with certain things, okay, whatever, and people, still make products and they use AI art, but you can go, look, I made this art by hand. And you know what? I only do I only do oil on canvas prints, and I only make 3 a year. And you know what? That's fine.
Well, they talk about that. They talk about that in Star Trek. Remember, they would be like, "Oh, I don't use the replicator. I cook." Right. That's Cisco.
Benjamin Sisko's dad runs a restaurant in New Orleans.
That's right. Yep.
And why? Everyone has replicators. You can get whatever food you want from the machine. And he's like, because some people want a home cooked meal. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And in Star Trek, that's fine because he doesn't have to turn a profit.
Well, that's they say. Someone in the road chat. It's like, well, you still need money. That's what's fascinating about Star Trek, is that you don't need money.
D Priest is right. I love the idea of a post-scarcity society, but we are not heading in that direction.
No, well, that's yeah. I mean, that's the problem. It's like we could have that. I mean, now we're really getting super off topic. We could have that, but for forces that be will not allow that to happen because they need need to have the serfs and the peasants and the ruling class. So
right. And the answer, by the way, is kind of given to us in the movie WALL-E, which I
was thinking WALL-E. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Which is that, and a lot of post-scarcity transhumanist fiction talks about this. Is about this idea of people who baseline, and basically it means they produce nothing, they contribute nothing to their society, And today we view those people, right, as leeches, as parasites, right? Because if you're not producing, right, there's a limited amount of resource. Well, when resources are infinite, someone can just go and consume media all day, contribute nothing to society, add nothing to the general human experience, and just be a complete and total leech. And there's no negative connotation to that because you're not taking from a limited pool. Okay, cool. That's kind of what they're trying to do to you today. That's what they're doing to you with TikTok and doom scrolling and all this other stuff, is they're trying to accommodate you into getting used to being placated by just your mass media consumption. And that way you don't mind that you're being stripped of all of your privileges and rights and, opportunity for fulfillment and survival.
I mean, do you know about like Calhoun's study with the mice in the mouse utopia where it became absolutely horrific?
Oh yeah,
No.
Yeah, not for, well,
I do not know this.
It was a mouse utopia. You could just get everything you possibly want as a mouse. This was actually in the 60s.
Yeah.
All the food and water you want. The climate was great everywhere. You've got everything you need if you want to make nests. There's separate little apartments for all the mice. And they were screened so that there were no diseases coming in. There were no predators. You could just do whatever you want in this mouse study. And it just like devolved into this like really weird situation that was really messed up. There would be like these the beautiful ones, I think was what they were called, who were just like constantly grooming themselves all day long, hour after hour. Like, did they court the other mice? No, they did not. They just kept grooming themselves and just sat there and then went to get food. And it just eventually caused the entire population to collapse, and they all
isn't that Gen Z, Gen Alpha right now, right? Don't like kids not date anymore, and
Nope.
like isn't South Korea like
Yep.
doomed
No,
because of
dude.
population
Yeah, South
crisis?
Korea. Oh, yeah, no. South Korea is because they only have 0.5 kids per family now.
Right.
And if you do that in 2 generations, they will no longer exist. It's
Right.
actually really bad. Like, this is actually happening worldwide where
There are political agitators now who try to draw similarities between us and like this mouse experiment for a variety of ways, but I think of it as more similar to Wall-E. Like, it's very similar to Wall-E, where they were just kind of there, not doing much. In Wall-E, they survived. They didn't die out like mice because it's humans, it's not mice.
yeah, I understand, but I don't know. Think of the Matrix, and they remember my favorite part of the Matrix in the beginning when Agent Smith's describing. He goes, "Oh yeah, we made a perfect utopia for everyone. It was a disaster." That's exactly what he says. He goes, "It was like mass quantities of crops were lost that year because the humans would not accept it. They want to live in suffering." And
Right.
I was like,
I mean, to be fair, as biological organisms, I mean, we are sort of conditioned to struggle and survive and reproduce. I guess the question is, does the human experience, are we defined by our suffering, or are we controlled by it? And so I mean, the optimistic view of things, right, is that people would be free to pursue, and they would really do that. They would unlock. They would truly embrace the wondrous nature of existence if only they didn't have to struggle and survive every single day. The other option is that they would become self-destroying, narcissistic, hedonistic, over, whatever. But I don't know. I mean,
so once again, don't forget, subscribe to Roll for Combat if you want to find out how to build that warlock better than anyone else. You come here, or we'll talk about AI existential dread, and
the existential dread of a dystopia, and
it's like
scarcity society versus everything collapsing, and weird sci-fi.
That, or how to have a really good session with your players. I mean, we talk about everything here. we talk about off topic. It's like this is the topic has left the has left the universe. I don't even know what, but this actually I don't know. Well, the 3 of us actually know a lot about this from different points of view, though.
Well, it turns out that we like Derek literally did a job where it was getting replaced by AI, right? I literally studied it at MIT, obviously before, significantly before this modern gen AI with some of its advancements, but I very deeply know some of the earlier versions that did not, for instance, have that attention that Derek was talking about in a very good way. And I also know some of those psychological studies, like the one with the mice, and there's a lot of other ones, because that's the stuff
I studied this in I mean, I studied this from a business point of view. Like, I studied a lot of this. In Carnegie Mellon, especially, I took a lot of courses in the history of Pittsburgh, and they would go through this because there were so many factories in Pittsburgh. And they went through like the automation. I always found it fascinating. And I actually mentioned in a lot of shows, I always talk about how this is something that comes up every couple of years. It's just that this is the first time where it's really starting to go past blue, white collar to like gold collar to like, jobs that were considered completely irreplaceable are getting replaced, and now everyone's freaking out, and they probably should.
Right. As for how does this affect RPGs, Anon asked. So I would say for you personally, as an at-home dungeon master, it means you're going to have access to the ability to create tools and have access to resources that you've never had access to before. You'll be able to, again, whether you think it's morally right or not, you'll be able to create your own art, your own custom art. Now, is it going to be to the exact qualifications of everything? No, but if you're not, when I make art, people are like, oh, but look at the hands. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm just making it for my token on VTT. Like, I don't give a crap. Like, like it's not like it's.
Actually, if you're printing it out for your table, the alternative might have been a starburst.
Right. It might have been a star. Exactly, Mark. Actually, the alternative would have been a stick figure drawn by me, right, on a piece of paper.
A good use of AI art that I fully support is that on our channel and our Roll for Combat Discord is that people make their own homebrew Eldamon, and they come up with just beautiful AI pictures of their Eldamon, and I love them. I love looking at everyone's Eldamons, and it's for their home use. It's for their games, and
it's not like they're publishing a book that's like, we're using the Orc license and we're putting out the Eldamon expansion, and it's using AI art to draw all the Eldamon. That's not what they're doing.
No, I fully support them doing those, and they look amazing. Amazing.
Here's a big use that you can do, right? Normally, you'd have to find a random encounter table for your game, right? And you have to have the right one or the right D100 table. But with AI, you can just be like, hey, my group is level 6, and I'm in a temperate hill, and I want a moderate random encounter. What could give me an idea? And maybe you don't like it. And that's great, because it's great that you might not like it and you might reject it, because that's not the AI running your game for you. It's the AI giving you a potential idea. You can be like, give me 10 ideas. And then you can look and see, are any of these good? It'd be like, or you could be like Derek and cause the AI to have anxiety issues and be like, he never likes any of my first thing. And like, no, AI, these 10 are not good. Give me another 10 ideas. And chat, I know the AI doesn't have real anxiety issues. It doesn't think, it just generates words based on what the most likely previous word was. I was making a joke.
Mark T is come for the clickbait, stay for the tangents. There you go. That should actually be the tagline.
Maybe that could be your tagline.
That is my tagline,
for
man.
Roll for Combat Live.
Yeah.
Now, so that's and then for your but real talk. And I'm not a publisher. I'm not an artist. But I would imagine that in the months or years to come, there's going to be eventually a point where more and more people are using AI art in their books. And especially if it comes from these sort of so-called vetted AI sources, right? Where it's like, oh, this came from this model, and they, only use they bought that collection from somebody. They had the rights to the license, right? Some artist was paid for it 27 years ago. They got $8, and now we have the license to it, so we can train all of our images on it. And that makes it okay, right? And, some publishers are going to be like, well, how about this? How about I generate a bunch of AI art, and if something needs very specific use, I will farm it out to an artist. And for most of my general workhorse type pieces, we're going to use AI. And I think that's just going to happen the way that every automated process has happened ever.
And by the way,
the markets, unfortunately, like Steven's example with the American apparel, the markets usually cause the cheaper thing to win out in the end. Now, obviously, in this particular case, like, I have relationships with artists. I work with artists. I am hoping that things do not break down for them. But unfortunately, the reality tends towards the bottom line eventually. So, like, one reason why I think people are pushing is that they know that it might head towards that, and they're hoping that pushback can at least slow it down to the point where the artists have time. Someone in chat was saying one of the problems is everything is hitting now and everything's changing and no one has solutions, and there's not 10 years to try to figure out what to do during that time. So if pushback can at least slow it down to give artists time to figure out what to do next, how they can continue, and in a way where their life is not just completely shaken up, in the way that if there was no pushback and it just happened almost immediately might happen. I think that it's good that there was pushback. It's very good that there was pushback in that case.
Right. I don't know that I guess art's kind of already in this position, but it's like when I was making tables, I made bespoke custom pieces for people who had a ton of money, and most people who need a table just to be a table, they buy some mass market, mass produced, automated, CNC'd, hyper, non-craftsman piece. And we just get along with that. Most people go, yeah, I mean, that's cool. I'm happy that you're able to do that, but I don't need that. And then for me personally, I can only make a living doing that if I charge an outrageous price.
So a lot of people, I keep saying, first of all, do you not have thumbs? I actually have to get that quote from Blizzard and make that like a little snippet. You got to help me with that, Derek. Now,
is that where it came from originally?
Yeah,
it's do you not have phones?
Do you not have phones?
Okay.
During Diablo, was it Immortal when they were showing it, and it was during BlizzCon.
Well, everyone was expecting Diablo 4,
right? And everyone was so excited, and they did Diablo Immortal, which was obviously a money grab portable game on your phone, and the reception was dead silence. And we're talking of like a ravenous crowd at BlizzCon, and then he goes, it's like, do you people not have phones? And that has become like the meme of anyone who's like, oh, do you not like this? Do you not realize? Of course, the joke's on them because the Diablo Immortal makes like, hundreds of millions of dollars. Anyhow, so that's where it comes from. Do you not have thumbs? I totally forgot what I was going to say. What the hell was I talking about?
Not enough people have clicked likes.
Before that.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
No, before I was right about to start on something
know.
new. Oh, damn it. It was good
you
too.
were going to transition us. It was so good.
I know. It was a really good transition. I was transitioning us to a very good thing. It's on the tip of my tongue. What the hell is it on? Diablo Immortal. Yeah, it's a tremendous success. See, this is what I was doing. Oh, well.
But, yeah. Well, all I'll say is this.
And AI Steven would never have... Oh, I do remember. Now I remember. That actually got me going. Oh, when
AI
people...
Steven.
No, because people keep saying, why would you get stuff written by people when you can get it from AI? That is a very good point. And that is why you're all watching us right now. That you're watching something that I'm saying and Mark is saying and Derek is saying is because getting products from specific people that you like, which is really no different than the old days with the old movie stars where you would literally go see movies with specific stars in them. Or I like to see Broadway shows. If there's specific people in a show, I will go see that show. I don't even need to know what that show is, just because I just want to see it.
Counterpoint to that, though,
You
Stephen,
didn't let
that
me
only
finish.
works. That works for the established people.
You're right.
How does that? How do you get established?
Hey,
If
man.
if it's the top people, I'll do it. Otherwise, I use AI. How do you get up there?
That's if I can answer that, you'd be a billionaire, because that's been people have been trying to wonder that for time immemorial, and people always wonder, how do you get where you need to be? I don't know, man. I mean, it's seriously, that's like any field.
I mean, it's like the frustrating thing. This came up recently when you had Kelsey on.
Yeah.
Which is, and I've seen people ask, in so many different live streams and stuff, but Kelsey, it came up again, which was basically someone was like, I have a great idea for a book. I want to do a thing. Like, how do I, launch a successful Kickstarter? It was basically the gist of the question. And Kelsey, and I've seen her give this answer several times, which she basically says, essentially, I mean, she's not saying this, but she's almost like, it doesn't matter if you make a really great game. Like, obviously, it should be great if you want to be successful. But what you really need before you make a great game is you need to have an audience, right? You need to have fans before you make your game, because they're the people who will buy your game. And so then it's like, which is great answer and true answer. And then the question is, okay, well, how do I get fans? And it's like, then it's like, I don't
It's
have
a
an
chicken and
answer
egg.
for that.
I mean, that's always been an issue.
It's already tricky. But when you if you added like an AI that also is much cheaper than you could do it for to the mix, how do you even get to be those few people that people like, sure, maybe I'll buy this because it's Mark Seifter. I trust Mark Seifter. And look, I get it. I'm not saying that I would necessarily trust an author whose name I've never seen before and I know nothing about them, who wrote a new RPG book, to have something that my group would find to be interesting and balanced if I didn't have some other reason to do so, right? I'm not saying I'm immune to this either. But like, if the answer is only those top elite names that people actually know will be able to handle this, Stephen, then I don't think that's a good answer for like the long-term health of the situation.
And Aldark is right. And this, they call it the iceberg of success, right? Where you don't see the countless hours that somebody put in. Kelsey created, products that she released for free. She, built a community up slowly over many years. I also think many people, not me, many people, because I wouldn't even say I'm that successful, but I would say whatever success I did have could be partly attributed to luck. Kelsey just happened to release Shadow Dark right after the OGL scandal, and everyone was up in arms and looking to do something completely different and wanting to show WoTC with their wallets what they think of them.
Timing is everything.
I started my YouTube channel and it's been a very modest success, but I have absolutely no doubt that if I hadn't started it during COVID, that it wouldn't have been, because a lot of people were sitting around watching YouTube.
No, so, I mean, look, I hate to say it, but like luck, timing is a big part of it. I mean, I hate that people think it's like if I'm really, really good and I'll just magically rise to the top. And the answer is no, unfortunately, if that was true. But if you are good and you keep plugging at it and you make yourself available to have, quote, the lucky breaks come more often than not, then you have a better chance of success than not.
I don't remember the source of the quote, right? But chance favors the prepared mind. Is that what is that quote from? I'll ask ChatGPT.
The way that I like to think of it is, if you don't even roll the D20, then you don't know if you got the natural 20, right, even if it was something that only was going to succeed on the 20. If you're just like, well, then I won't roll. And then you're not going it out there. If you roll 100 times, then you're going to get some 20s unless you're very unlucky.
And look, I'm telling you right now, a big part of it, because I'm seeing people ask, and someone actually wrote this about, you have to be very social too. Like, I have been famously very lucky in my life. However, I would also say I put myself out there all the time. So I think the two are obviously very closely linked. Like if I wasn't constantly out there, constantly looking for opportunities, I don't know if it's luck or as one of my old analysts said, it's like it's not luck. It's that you have the ability to recognize opportunities that others don't see and pounce on them, which appears as luck, but really is just...
Well, that's what I said. It's the iceberg, right? It's the iceberg of success. You don't see you just see the success, and you don't see all the
failures.
Right.
Or the failures of other times, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, Steven is dynamic, and he's willing to take risks. He's willing to try something new instead of just be like, I'll just repeat what I did before. And he has the privilege of having enough of a cushion of money with, like, his upbringing that if he messed up a few times... It wasn't going to be like, that's the end, which some people don't have that at all.
Yes.
And when you combine all of that, he makes his own luck that way, because not everyone who has the resources Steven had would still even then take all of those risks and be willing to try something new just to see how it works and to adjust based on the data like that.
Yeah. I will say this, though, and I think this is important states, is AI and D&D really all that bad? For publishers... Maybe there's a very contentious issue, and I'm going to say something, which is maybe not very. I'm not discouraging you from purchasing any product, including from this wonderful company. I did get the t-shirts, by the way, Stephen.
Good.
Which is the fact of the matter is, AI is a force multiplier and a gate smasher for talentless hacks like me. Like, if you're Mark, you don't need AI. If you're Mark, you don't need AI.
This goes back to...
You're smart. You're going to come up with stuff. Like, if you're an artist, you can make cool little sketches. I mean, there are people on my Patreon who throw together these cool little sketches for their games. Now, they're not like professional quality pieces of art, but I'm like, damn, that's actually really fucking good. Like, you can actually like see what that is, and you have a cool little style. I have none of that. Okay, like most of people who play these games, I am reliant on the skills and abilities of greater men and women. Okay, I am a little shitberg, and AI, especially in the art department, but also in terms of like bouncing ideas and coming up with cool creative ideas, empowers me to be my own little mini publisher and creator for my own games, and maybe that makes me less reliant on publishers like Wizard of the Coast, Paizo, or yes, even potentially Roll for Combat. So I find that to be very empowering.
So I was going to say, remember, bring it back to kind of the topic, when crossbows came out.
Sure.
That was a technology.
I like how you talk about that like that. I like that you talk about that like that happened in 1990.
Like, remember
when crossbows? Well, our audience knows this.
Remember when Steven was at the Battle of Agincourt?
Oh God, I know.
All those bows were just shooting the knights, and I
remember. Steven's like, I remember being in my 20s in the early 90s and being so upset.
I know,
because I grew up having to shoot that longbow.
I know
every
that
Sunday.
longbow, and man, my one arm was bigger than the other, and all those hours and hours, and then just taken away by the commoners with their silly crossbows. How dare they? How dare they?
Yeah, but I watch a lot of medieval demo type YouTube channels and stuff like that, and they talk about that all the time about how
they talk about
training when they were
crossbows.
kids.
Right, they talk about crossbows and gunpowder. Like, those are the two big force multipliers that just changed everything. Like,
and one of the things that they talk about a lot is that it wasn't necessarily that. I mean, longbows were in many cases the superior weapon. They certainly had a much higher rate of fire.
Yeah.
And they had certain advantage against certain types. But the main advantage was that you didn't. These kids were like training from the time they were like 6.
No, someone can get and you can get someone pretty proficient in a crossbow in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Just point it in this direction, pull the trigger, right? And so it was a efficiency thing, and yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. So for me, AI is the crossbow, right? I didn't have the time to develop artistic skill. But the idea is also, is art in the idea or is it in the execution? Is what makes art the process, or is it the vision and what you want to see have happen? If you really liked a piece of art and then you found out that it was made by a computer, do you not like it anymore after the fact? For example, my ex-girlfriend, who is still my really good friend,
Was made by a computer?
no, she was made by
And
a
that's why you didn't like her after the fact?
Wow, you're
No,
like, oh, you're computer generated. Oh well, sorry.
She I've tried to get her for years to like use like an iPad or like a Wacom or a Cintiq tablet to do her art, and she's like, no, that's not art. Art is in the medium. Art is in the process. Like, you should be using paper and pencils and paints and actually have to physically work with the medium. When I can control Z, when I can work in layers, that's not art. That's her viewpoint, right?
No, Marshall McLuhan, the median is the message.
Yeah, the medium is the message. So for her, art isn't just about the finished product. It's about the path that you took to get there. And the fact that all of this, you don't have this process of just being able to. I work in Photoshop, tons of layers, and I don't like that layer. Let me move it. Let me Control Z it. Let me try a couple different things. And she thinks that's like, well, that's not art. So it's interesting how people have this very subjective nature to it. But all I know is it has allowed me as a game master the ability to create visual elements, to create splash screens, title cards, all of this stuff that I would never have been able to do unless I was willing to pay $30 to $40 to $50 to $60 to $70 a piece to some artist, which of course I never was going to do. So essentially it was like being locked out of having that experience.
Yeah, and that's actually something else you bring up, which is important, is that people's like, well, you just took someone's job away. You didn't, because you weren't going to be using people anyhow. And
right.
There's new opportunities that arise from you using AI art. So like, maybe, I'm just making this up, it's like, well, before I wasn't going to actually create a show, an actual play. I'm just making this up. But now I have AI that will help me create the art and create the assets, and I can create t-shirts. And now maybe I'll do an actual play and I'll bring some people in and pay them. So now jobs were created and people are entertained because of AI, because it helped you create something that normally wouldn't be created. And I'm going to blow everyone's minds. Are you ready? Are you ready? If it wasn't for automation and improvements of technology, you wouldn't be watching this, and you wouldn't be playing anything made by 99% of the TTRPG community. Because how is it that Kelsey Dion is able to make a multi-million-dollar TTRPG, and she has one employee? One! That's it! Me and Mark, we're the only full-time employees here at Roll for Combat. And yet
we do have freelancers helping out. They do a significant amount for us.
Mark always cuts my knees out from under me. But look at all these books. Look at all this stuff. I don't need an army. We don't need an army to make these things. We do this all ourselves because efficiency has gotten to these levels that you can do it with one person. What used to take... If you read any old TSR book, every one of these books is about how they needed 50 people to make one book. Okay? You do not now. One person can do the whole thing and get into stores. It's kind of amazing if you think about it.
Yeah. I just and then as a consumer, Mark was talking before about the lowest common denominator oftentimes being the cheapest. You have to ask yourself this: what would you rather buy? $75. Well, actually, what would you rather buy? A book that had no art in it, a book that was more expensive but had AI art, but not that much more expensive, $5 more, or a book that cost $175 and it has like this stamp, like 100% human made, real grown in the human.
This is the dystopian dark future that I was talking about before, where you wind up like the American Apparel thing with Steven. Maybe it will get to the point where it gets really, really priced out in one direction, and then the market for what people will buy might lead to things. That's why having this push, having people speak out now is kind of the only way to slow that down, because otherwise that's the direction things are probably going to go.
And here's how I know everyone is fucked. Because of chicken. Okay? Chicken. Because see, when I was in my 30s and I was paleo and primal, like I really got into literature and I read all about factory farming, and I didn't approve of its practices. And I've been blessed, lucky enough to have the money most of the time to be able to buy free range organic chicken. And every time I go to the grocery store, you know what I see? I see all that organic chicken is still there, and all the factory farm cheap stuff that's $6.99 or whatever, $5.99 a pound, that's all basically sold out. But the $11.99 to $12.99 pound, the organic chicken that was raised humanely, that's better for your health, that tastes better, it's better in every conceivable fashion. That's right there on the shelf. There's nothing but choices for Derek, because no one buys it because it's more expensive. Doesn't matter that it's better. Doesn't matter that it's tastier. It doesn't matter that it's more ethical. People don't give shit. They just buy what's cheap.
Well, that is true for food. There are other industries where it's not necessarily true, but it requires it to be a prestige purchase. For instance, there is one industry in which the more ethical option is cheaper, but yet some people still buy the more expensive, less ethical option. How about diamonds? Lab grown is more ethical and cheaper.
Right.
And here's the funny fact. Because it's a prestige purchase, did you know that like De Beers and some of the people who were, I found out that they were like trying to buy up some of the ability to control lab grown. I was like, to raise it, to make it closer to their own. It's like, no, they actually want to lower the price of lab grown to make there be more of a distinction, to make people feel that it's worse, that it's cheaper, and then make them feel more prestige towards the like non-lab grown diamonds, and make it more of a prestige product for really rich people to buy, which is very strange to me, but I get it. The point is that can happen, but it's almost impossible for that to be something I think that would happen with RPG books. Right. Like diamonds are very different because it gets into a very effective marketing campaign of sort of like almost brainwashing that they put on people of like, if your marriage is real, then you would use this. Whereas before that, people use whatever gem.
Right. Well, to say nothing of the fact that De Beers created the very concept of the engagement ring.
Correct.
Which never existed before anyways. And like
they completely made it up. At the time, critics was like, this is a cynical ploy. Nobody's going to fall for this. It's obvious.
Right.
And yet.
Now Happy Meep says no one bought it, they wouldn't keep stocking it. Oh no, people buy it. There's enough people like me, but I'm saying there's like one column of organic chicken, and then there's like 90% of the rest of the case is factory raised.
But you are like, that's the whole reason. Oh, let's pivot. So someone wrote, that was the chicken tangent. Well, now I'm going to do the casino tangent. So craps do not make casinos money. It's actually one of the worst games. If anything, a lot of them, they lose money on craps. I won't get into
That's why it's one of the best games to play.
I love craps. And I won't get into the math behind it, but craps is it's a very bad game for casinos. However, the people who play craps are the highest rollers. Therefore, they always have craps in casinos because they want to get the whales in, and they want to get people who with money, so they make sure that they have those as loss leaders in a way. That's why you have the organic chicken, because the people who are going to be buying that organic chicken have enough money to buy organic chicken, which means they're going to probably buy other things there. So it is a balance between having both the high, the mid, and the low price items, and that's why they have it there. Anyhow, Little tangent.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying is that, like, unfortunately, the fact is that this is going to make things cheaper, and people prefer the cheaper thing. And I don't necessarily know that that's great.
And also,
but,
I say it all the time here. What people say is not what
Very
people do. They always say one thing, and then but in the privacy of their own home and in the anonymity of the internet.
Okay, fuck the privacy of their own home.
Yeah.
Okay, raise your hand if you own a channel that lambasted Wizards of the Coast and the D&D 5th edition game in 2023 because of the OGL scandal.
Is that me? Am I supposed to be raising my hand?
That is you. Okay, right. Now,
What about you? Shouldn't you?
You should be raising your hand a little too.
You did too.
Absolutely. I didn't make a single video about it.
Oh, you're right. You did it. Okay. Just me. Just me.
Didn't lambast it. Just you.
Just me.
It.
Thank you. What's the point?
My point is, raise your hand if you published a game that used the 5e this year.
Yay.
Yay. Right. I mean,
wait, hold on. Steven didn't publish a game that used 5e.
Well, what do I publish? I don't publish.
Not a game, but like
fine, publish a
wow, welcome to my world, Eric.
I'll raise my hand. No,
I would kill him by the end of the first week, Steven.
I know. Well, I know. Well, you're going to get to spend 4 days with him, so we'll see what happens. 5 days, really.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. When we get there, I want to say that.
Yeah.
Mark, I'm excited. Mark,
won't make it to the end of the first week, so I'm going to survive.
You'll be
Where'd Mark go? I'm going to go to the next show. It'll just be me and Derek. It's like, well, Mark's dead. Yeah, Derek killed him.
Amy Z says, deluxe RPG books are the organic chickens of the RPG world.
Totally.
A sentence that has never been said before. And you know what?
You're
Amy,
100%
you're right.
right. 100%.
What if that's the dichotomy? Well, I guess once you buy the art, I guess it doesn't make sense. But like you could imagine now, I mean, maybe even not that in far in the future, where the Kickstarter has a big, huge stretch goal. You know, if we get to 350,000, we'll hire real artists.
Oh, that's coming. That's coming.
I could see that happening.
Oh, yeah,
There's already
coming.
been Kickstarter things where
board
stretch
games
goals were paying more to the freelancers.
Yeah.
I've seen those before.
Yeah, and board games.
I've seen those before where, like, literally, I was actually an author on one that was just like, yeah, this stretch goal is that all the freelancers get 3 more cents per word. We're profit sharing it with them. That's the stretch goal.
I said this 2 weeks ago with the Professor DM, where I said what's going to start happening is you're going to start seeing a lot more AI art in TTRPGs and board games. And oh boy, did people get mad at me just saying that. But let me tell you, the board game industry, they're
in big trouble right now.
They're in, not, I wouldn't say big trouble. They're going to die. Like
hit the iceberg. They've hit the iceberg.
They can't survive.
The question is what happens next.
They really can't survive, and they're going to have to start cutting costs severely if they want to survive. And the amount of art that is in a board game, especially if you have cards, is
insane.
Insane how much art is in that. You better believe they're going full AI, and they're not going to blink. They're not even going to blink once, let alone twice, because that's the only way they can survive.
Well, that's the other thing about it, unfortunately, too, right? As AI starts to squeeze out artists, the artists that remain need to charge higher prices to maintain their standard
already
of living.
happening to me, because I get every
runaway problem.
Single day, I get more and more people asking me to do, and these would be artists I could never even get on the phone, and now they're literally asking if I have work. And some of them, their pricings are going up, and I'm telling them that I can't pay higher prices. And more importantly,
with the tariffs, Steven can't pay more.
Yeah,
right?
And more importantly,
there's also more
there's so much competition, right? I literally am like, I hate to break it to you, I get 3 to 5 people every day who write me asking to work. I have hundreds of artists who are begging me to get work done for them. So I prefer working with you, but I can't go higher. And sorry.
Now, Daryl in chat, I think, is probably on the right of it, which is, and we've had, like, I've kind of talked about this, and Stephen has brought it up not necessarily either or, but AI art refined or enhanced by human artists.
Yes.
I think that's definitely where you're going to go first.
Oh no, that's where everyone
or
is
the other
going.
direction
That's where
where
people
a
are
human does it, but they're AI tools that help
Sure.
like with
That
parts of the
direct.
process.
Well,
in
they
the
already
same
do
way
that.
with
They
grammar
already do
checking.
that. Yeah, no, that's already been doing that. That's already everyone's been doing that. No one talks about that. Everyone does that. Who works digitally, they already do that. It's the other way around. What I'm seeing is that there are artists, professional artists, that are getting very good at generating AI with prompts, and then they go in and touch it up. And so that you can't tell. They find the hands, they fix the hands. There's always these like blurs. You'll see sometimes where there's be like a blur area, and that's very telltale of a AI art. They'll go in and fix that. Like they basically go in and fix it up, so it's pretty much impossible to tell that it was done by AI, because anything that would tell it or give it away, they fix. And they like it because an artist might be able to do 4 to 6 pieces a month, and that's it. And they'll might charge, we'll say they maybe make $1,000 a month doing this. By the way, the reason a lot of these artists live in countries where the standard of living is much lower, like Brazil and stuff. They like in Brazil, making $1,000, $2,000 a month is a lot. That's doing very, very well.
So what you're saying is keep my channel the way it is,
Yes.
and move to Brazil.
I have a lot of my coders have left the United States. One of my best coders, he just moved to Argentina, and he lives like a god down there.
Me gusta Argentina. I have been.
He lives like a god in Argentina, and he charges.
That is true. I remember, granted, this was over 10 years ago, but I remember going to Argentina, and I remember I got the most incredible grass-fed, the almost incredible, most delicious steak I've ever had in my life, with an incredible glass of red wine, and I think it cost the equivalent of like $3 US or something like that.
Right, but that's the thing. It's that a lot of my artists, a lot of them live in countries where they, they
But
make
granted,
enough.
This is all predicated on the fact that the US dollar was strong, and
Yeah, but still, well, I don't pay them in US dollars. That's the other thing. I'll pay them in whatever their native currency is. That always gets converted. So,
is it reals?
Well, it depends what country. I work with a lot of people, but the point is that these people will get anywhere from $10 to $30 per piece of art. They could do 5 of these a day. 6 of these a day. They're going to be making. Here's the plus side of this, and this is where it's going to start.
This is by the way. This is Steven has gone back. I want everyone who's watching to know he's gone back to his hypothetical for where they may touched up AI ones at a lower rate.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. That doing 2 to 3 a day of drawing it all yourself.
No, you're right. So you can draw, and this is the artists I work with. They might be able to make $1,000 a month just drawing, and literally spending 40 to 50 hours per piece to get it done. But now, using a combination of their skills of, hey, I am a natural artist, but I'm getting really good at the AI and learning how to use the prompting, so I generate art and then I clean it up. Now I'm making $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month because I'm able to do way more at lower prices, and I'm still using my skill sets. And that's what's going to happen. You'll start seeing the better people pivot and being able to accept the way things are going to go. And it sucks. I mean, but that's happened throughout all of history. You can either sit there, grit it, and fight it, and hope that you're the last one standing, or you could adapt. And I would say adapting is probably the better way to go if you want to keep eating.
Yeah, but I mean, freelance said that's what the real fight about. It seems in order to make AI acceptable, you have to devalue the work of creators and thinkers. But we've been doing that for 50 years. We devalued the work of craftsmen. We've devalued the work of countless jobs in the name of efficiency, in the names of increased throughput, in the names of everything. And yes, before, as Stephen was alluding to, creatives held themselves high above these talentless blue collar people, right? Like, yeah, their job's going to get automated because they're just a mindless brute who's, welding metal. Of course, their job should be automated. Who would want to do that? That's not even a skill, right? That's like picking up trash from the side of the road, which is a short-sighted and completely egotistical thing to say. But now that it's coming for these, what did you refer to them? Gold collar positions.
Yep, gold collar.
Now people are losing their collective shits.
Oh yeah, they're because they didn't think this would ever happen. Like even let alone in their lifetime, let alone so damn fast. Like
I didn't think it was going to happen when it started happening because I was like, this is so bad.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
When
a couple years ago,
it was so bad.
Yeah,
it was laughable. It was like only usable for like memes.
Yeah,
it was just
horrific. Really getting good.
And just in the last 6 months, 12 months. I mean,
it's getting really
I don't even
good.
I cannot stress to you enough how much like the recent change to ChatGPT 4.0 and its image generation capabilities was unbelievably huge.
And
that's.
I know the text has updated too because my dad
really
has given
good.
like mystery cases to training doctors, and the old one that was not 4.0 would like not be able to get most of them because they're mystery cases. They're like cases doctors usually can't solve.
Right.
We get like maybe one. He'd be like, put it on your GTPT, see if it can solve this, and it usually couldn't. And they'd be like, oh yeah. But then he had someone who had 4.0 and it solved almost all of them.
Yeah.
So it's clearly a sea change in its ability to do stuff.
Anecdotal, but there was a great story on Reddit, and I do have to leave, I have Racquetball, but there was a great story on Reddit where they went to the doctor presenting all these strange conditions, and they didn't know what was going on with them, and they went to the ER, and they ordered a bunch of tests, and they're like, they've got like their My Chart or whatever, their thing, and the lab results started coming in before the doctor ever returned, sometimes in 10 minutes, sometimes in 20 minutes. They took the PDFs of those lab results, put it in ChatGPT and said, these are my symptoms. Here are my lab work. What do you think is going on with me? Spot on. And the doctor came in like an hour later and like the person was like, I think I have this. And the doctor was like, how do you possibly know that? And they're like, yeah, ChatGPT. It's really good at recognizing those kind of pattern recognition systems, those kind of being able to, collate on that across that sort of information. So I thought that was pretty.
That's actually, but you see, that's also another thing where it's getting good is that think about how many times doctors would have to be used to diagnose very simple or routine things. And I mean, I work in medicine. Let me tell you, they are using AI. They started, remember back with Watson? That's what Watson's being used for. The AI that won Jeopardy. Remember that? Like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and it was considered such a big thing. Watson's mostly being used in the medical fields because it is able to figure out the most common cases extremely fast and without, I'd quite say, wasting the time of valuable professionals and physicians so that they can take on the more esoteric and rarer cases. And this is the good part of using the AIs is that humans then can be focusing on things that AI can't do, or AI is like very difficult. It's very difficult for them to do. And that's like, that's the good part.
My one nephew's about to graduate high school this spring, and he doesn't really have college in his future. My other nephew's 16. And I both told him, I said, guys, it'll probably get eventually replaced by a robot too, but it's going to be a long time. Become an electrician, for the love of God. Become a plumber. My God, the amount of money I've had to pay to so-called simple, brute, blue-collar laborers in the last 12 months is mind-boggling.
Well, did you see that South Park episode on that? South Park did an entire episode.
Are you sure, Derek? Derek, I think you've made the same comment. And then Stephen has referenced the South Park episode before in a previous episode.
Yes, I have. But the South Park episode is specifically about how the lawyers were like, oh, AI will never come for our job. And then it's about all the gold-collar professionals of how they can't get work because AI's taken over. And then they're literally sitting around like the Home Depot looking for work, like they're migrant workers, and the ones that are, and then of course they call someone in to fix like their sink, and it's like, that's $1,000. He's like, I can't afford that. I'm just a lawyer.
Right. Well, I told you when I wanted to have a guy come in and do my my small bathroom. I can't even stress out. This is 8 foot by 5 foot. We're talking like a 40 square foot bathroom. Okay. And he gave me the most outrageous quote I've ever heard in my life. And I said, don't you think that's a little, crazy, honestly? And he said, I want you to say no. He said, honestly, if you said yes, I would feel bad because of how much I'm charged, but I'd feel worse because I know I don't have the time to do this. I'm so booked up. Like, I'm telling people prices that are literally insane because I want them to say no because I have so much work. And then people still say yes, and now I'm even more busy. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this money. I'm going to go Scrooge McDuck with it.
Oh,
and
no.
it was just like...
I have a handyman, and this guy I've known forever, and we treat him really well. We were always giving him work, and he loves us. And he's like, he's booked for like a year. I mean, he is totally booked. He squeezes us in as a favor, but he's like, I'm just like, it's just endless. I'm endlessly booked.
Well, because also too, and I'm going to throw my friends under the bus here. I have a lot of friends in their 30s and 40s, and I'm the most handy amongst all of them.
And
that is saying a lot.
You and I are going to be setting up that booth. Let me tell you, they used to call me the handy Jew because I would go around. Because my dad taught me how to build stuff. Oh, you and we talked about that. You were impressed because I built something. What was that?
You mentioned it on a previous episode.
You did your deck?
Oh, right. I built the deck. I repaired the deck.
About the deck.
You were impressed.
I was very impressed.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, nobody, all of my generation was taught, just go, be white collar, go be gold collar, pay the lesser peons to go do the work for you. You don't need to learn this skill. It's a drudgery skill. It's there's no satisfaction in it. It's for broken people who have to do these horrible, painful jobs. And now they're laughing all the way to the bank. And so, I don't know.
No, I actually do.
Maybe the shoe is on the other foot now.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a limit to that, though.
Also, too, let's be very clear about something. People don't need art, and they don't need role-playing games, but you do need a functioning HVAC system, and you need a plumber that works.
Oh, plumber, forget it. Yeah, plumbers make...
they make whatever they want to make.
Yeah,
they make whatever they want to make.
They're always in demand.
My hot water tank broke, and I bought it.
Mine exploded on my birthday.
Yeah, mine didn't explode, but the bottom part of it rusted out. All the water.
No, seriously, that was my birthday present.
All the water flooded out. And I came home. I bought a new hot water tank, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this myself. I understand the basic principles of how it works, and I looked at it. And I was like, it's my hot water tank. There's gas lines. It's plumbing. If I'm wrong, it's going to create a problem. I just go, let me just hire a plumber.
Right.
And so I called a plumber. I said, how quickly can you get out here? He goes, well, I can get out there in the next couple of days, but it's going to cost you. Okay, fine. How much? Guy came out. It took about an hour, maybe 90 minutes to take out the old one, put in the new one. $1,800. And this is in Cleveland, fucking Ohio.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know. Well, that's why there's actually, you can look this up, the amount of trade school applications have been skyrocketing.
I believe it.
Oh, yeah. You might as well, because they know, and that's probably not going to be replaced by AI. Not for a while.
Although, if you see those Boston Dynamics videos of those robots.
I just saw some Boston Dynamics stuff. That is, that's getting bad.
Freelancer, you're absolutely right, too, right? A lot of this stuff was installed 20, 30 years ago, and it just needs to be replaced regularly. But generationally, we have so much less people that are able to do that and keep the maintenance up you're absolutely right. So Scott says, still better than renting. You're right, but some days, my God, it does not feel like it. But
let me tell you. So I moved in my house. So I moved in 18 years ago, and I knew the house had to be fixed up. I have replaced every single thing in this house except for the framing. I mean, there's nothing left. And my worry is that I'm coming up to 20 years, and a lot of that was done in the beginning. I was like, I better sell this house. I better sell this house quick before. Right.
Well, to be clear, my plan was to sell my house last year. Before I was like, it probably needs a new water heater. I probably need a new furnace. I was like, let me sell this thing before those things go. Yeah,
and I mean everything. Like the roof, had to redo the roof, had to do all the insulation, had to redo the I don't have a basement, a crawl space. Had to redo the water tank. Exploded on my birthday. And there was nothing left. There's nothing left in the house that I didn't replace.
It's the House of Theseus. Is it even the same?
It is the House of Theseus. It's Theseus.
Yes, it's
well,
totally
it is the House of Theseus. But you know what? I know
Look
for
at all these nerds in chat. Like,
I know.
yeah,
I know.
people are saying
Aaron, there was
that,
so many people who started to say
I
that.
didn't see that they had all said that.
Oh, they're
but,
all
yeah.
saying that. They're all
Yeah.
saying that. You're all nerds. You're all nerds. You're all.
Yeah,
But it's true. It is the House of Theseus. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Wow, I don't know if there's anything. Just the framing. That's about it. I don't think there's anything left.
like the drywall.
We replaced everything.
Oh,
I
wow.
literally replaced. It's a 2-story house. I replaced the whole second story and added to it. Yeah, like that was all taken downstairs. We added a whole bunch more. We
It's good to be
redid
the king,
whole.
I guess.
He redid the front. There was it was. I bought it at a very good time. It was very reasonable, and I thought it was great. And then my dad, who's very handy, came in and he goes, "Yeah, this place is great. Looks like I'm gonna have to read the whole thing." I'm like, I didn't know that at the time, but boy, was he right, because I had to redo everything. There's nothing left in this house that hasn't been
So,
redone.
Derek, are you going to make your racquetball?
Yeah, I gotta leave like now. So
All right. Well, now the International House of Theseus. Yes.
That's it.
If we did a bingo card, Theseus would be on there, because that comes up about every two or three episodes.
We already talked about this. The free space on the RFC bingo would be
Is your
even
brother,
brings up-
Danny
the brother Danny Glicker, who works in Hollywood as a costume
Yeah.
designer. That's the free space.
That's
that
not a
comes
free
up
space. I don't say that every time.
Dude, that comes up. I'm not even kidding you. Like 70 to 80%.
Oh no,
Yes.
it's 70-80%. Well,
Yes.
because he has a very unique job that's very
Listen, buddy,
interesting.
We've heard it all before. We know
All right,
it.
fine.
We know
I
it.
will
We know it.
never mention it again.
No,
Okay,
look,
so
you're proud
you
of your
will,
brother,
but-
and you should be. Ask ChatGPT.
He's working on
how
a
often-
really cool project right now too.
that is the alternative.
I'm just
for the free
saying-
space for sure, which is heist. Everything's a heist.
Derek, do you
I
have
have not
any
mentioned that in a
siblings?
long time, by the way.
I have a younger sister. Yes.
So Derek's sister's job has never come up on this entire thing. I didn't even know for sure that he had one. But maybe my brother's job, one of the two of them has come up once or twice. But Danny Glicker
I
has
have
come
to
up a lot
mention
more
what he
often.
does, because this is their first time watching the show. It always happens. So if you don't have context, that's why it comes up, and you have to give the
There
background.
you go. There
So
you
apparently,
go.
my free space is I hate initiative. That's my free space.
Really?
No, yeah.
That didn't come up in it.
No
that doesn't
way.
Come up
That
on our
is
show
not.
that often.
No, it comes up on my show a lot.
No,
Derek, you
that's-
hating every ancestry other than like humans and maybe elves and dwarves probably would be your free space on our show. Although you didn't say it today at all.
Halflings are okay.
I did show him the quest giver from Release the Kraken, and he
And did he do the same thing that the quest giver did when the quest giver was trying to give you the money to buy the ship?
what's that?
No, my
It,
reaction.
it kind of like coughs up like.
Oh, right, no. He's like,
did
you
he,
know,
like, kind of
He's
start
like, oi.
barfing 'cause
He
he
was more like,
doesn't
oi,
like the-
or like,
I was like, gee, thanks, I hate it.
Okay, there you go.
thanks. I hate it. It's terrible. That's
Perfect.
fantastic. Oh no, my free space is. Wait, I have a story about this. I do have a story.
No, I do have to go.
Okay.
So
I mean,
everyone.
Oh, and
until
Steven's
next time-
magic card number. Yeah, that's another free space.
Until next time, if
4
you want to
digits,
battle
baby.
if you want to battle the zoo, you have to input it into a generative AI and figure out what it says to do.
That's right. Or you could just roll for combat.
Oh, he told it. Oh,
He said the thing.
he said the thing.
The other half of the